So we'll start. And a small introduction to our speaker today, Mr. Sidharth Chhabra is an alumnus of University of Michigan and DTU Delhi Technological University. He has published several research papers in international journals and conference proceedings. He is currently based in Michigan, USA, and serving as a researcher at Vedic Preservation Initiative, Michigan. He is a data scientist and Puranic scholar. He is an author of a wonderful book, The Big Bang and the Sages, Modern Science Catches Up with Ancient Puranas. So we warmly welcome Mr. Sidharth Chhabra and and yeah, Mr. Chhabra, the floor is for you to speak up. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you, Praveen ji or Prem Kishore ji for giving an introduction to myself. Whatever I am is by the blessings and the support of my teachers, both my spiritual and material teachers. So I'm grateful to for the opportunity which ISS is giving me to share my research. Being a scientist, what gives one's the most pleasure is to find an audience which is receptive and which is interested in hearing and the hard work done by a scholar over many years. So this research took me a couple of years, and it gives me a lot of happiness to share with people who are also seekers and who are seeking knowledge like myself and who are interested in knowing further truths about the world and ourselves. So thank you, Praveenji, and thank you, Dr. Jyoti Ranjan Berua, for organizing this and giving me a platform to share my work. So, usually when we give a talk at a conference, you can see people's faces, and that makes people nervous. I find it quite the opposite. I feel that seeing people's faces gives me encouragement. So if you're not too shy and if it doesn't hurt you, and if your bandwidth is good enough, I request that we can see your face and see your expressions. So thank you, Srikanji, for taking the initiative. Okay, so at least we have one bold person here in the audience. Oh, we have a couple more. Subhash Golji also joined. Thank you, Subhashji, for showing your beautiful face. So today we're going to discuss, although the presentation was mentioned as what do the sages say about the Big Bang, I titled it slightly differently, and I'm going to share my screen in a moment. Okay. Got it. Okay, so here we are. Okay, so here we are. I titled it slightly different, and the title now is What NASA Can Learn from the Puranas. And we can add to it what other scientists can also learn from the Puranas. Now, it seems quite, in some sense, rude because to say something like this, but actually there is a lot which the modern scientist can learn from the Puranas and the Vedas. So I'm going to discuss few such details which I discovered in my research. And I know this conference or this meeting happens every Saturday, where people from all around the world, from different walks of life, share different findings from the Vedic culture and Vedic scriptures, which can be used, which can be beneficial for the modern civilization, for the modern scientist. So before we move forward, I want to take some input from the audience here. What do you think can modern scientists learn from the Puranas or the Vedas? Let's hear a few responses. And you may please first of all share your name also, where you're from, so I get to know you a little better. Yes, Mahendra Pratap Singh ji, you're unmuted. Would you like to say some? What do you think the modern scientists can learn from the Puranas or Vedas? Okay, you can type in the chat room, chat place also. Let's see. Suhas is saying they can learn creation. Thank you, Suhas, for your input. Anyone else? We'll take 5 responses before I move forward.
I think they should change their views on basically this science itself. The way the empirical science is going on, it's all based on these assumptions only. So rather they should try to see what the Vedas are trying to say.
Okay, so you're saying medical scientist or medical science can benefit a lot from the Vedic model of the soul, the super soul, the mind, the body, that kind of
No,
system.
no, not that. No. I'm trying to say that they'll have to change the fundamentals of science itself. They'll have to change their thinking altogether.
Okay, and
so they are going from downwards upwards rather they should be coming from the top down.
Oh, so you mean to say instead of gaining knowledge through empirical methods, they should try to seek the knowledge from the Shabda method, where the knowledge comes from Vedas and Puranas. Is that what you're saying?
They should try to interpret that actually.
Okay, good. I'm going to discuss that today in my talk. Thank you for bringing that out, Subhash Goelji. Would you like to share about yourself? Where are you from and something about yourself?
I have passed out from IIT Bombay, but long time back, 50 years back.
Wow.
So then, and also worked with NASA also.
Hey, wow. And what
for
did you... Wow.
For a short time though, in 1971.
Great. Good to know.
So that's and thereafter I've gone into business now.
Okay. Wonderful. So from being an IITian to a NASA guy to now a businessman. Thank you, Subhash, for joining, and thank you for being courageous to share your views. I really appreciate it. Let's see. Thank you. Then we have Jyotiranjan Barua. Sorry, first of all, we have Srikanji. No, actually. Malika Jain. She's saying, I'm a scientist from Ahmedabad, and they can discover in the field of medical research truth about Vedic ideology in the form of likewise Ayurveda. Yes. Srikanti saying they can know about the supernatural. Vinit Sani saying concept of time. Okay. Jyotiranjan Barua, yay, our doctor is here. They can look for broader ideas which is otherwise is hidden from perception. Interesting. Atul ji from Mirzapur, Uttar Pradesh. Holistic development, technology benefits for all species. Yes. Malika Jain, the ultimate truth of universe through Krishna consciousness. Wow. Todanji, modern science is based on materialistic point of view, whereas Vedas and Puranas talk about material as well as spiritual point of view, subtle energy. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for sharing this wonderful input. I really appreciate that you're engaging with me. So all these ideas there's nothing wrong, and they all are correct. So the reason I brought this out is just to share with all of you that how much scope is there for us as as representatives or as students of Vedas and Puranas in terms of sharing these findings from the Vedas and Puranas with the modern audience. So all these ideas are wonderful, and I encourage everyone to take them up and pursue them, and and see what kind of responses you get, what kind of knowledge do you get from the Vedas and Puranas, and how you can build the bridge. And this is exactly what I've tried to do here. I'm trained as a data scientist, as Prem Kishorji mentioned. And being a data scientist, I'll try to look at numbers and try to make connections. So I made some connections. I wrote this in my book called The Big Bang and the Sages. And I'm going to discuss 5 data points from that today in my talk. Most of them are connected to astrophysics or cosmology. That's why my topic, the presentation is titled NASA. However, in my book, I also discuss paleontology, and also I discuss a little bit of embryology also in terms of connections between data points, and also geology. So in this presentation, my talk will be mostly concerned with astrophysics and cosmology based data points. Okay. So moving further. So first of all, what are the Puranas? Now Puranas, there's a famous shloka in the Mahabharata which says, Purnat Purnam uchate, which means that what completes is called Purana. What does it complete? It completes the Vedas. So it is said in the Chandogya Upanishad. First of all, it is said in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad that the Puranas and Itihasas come from the mouth of the Lord. Just as the Vedas, they also come from the mouth of the Lord. This is said in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. And then it said in the Chandogya Upanishad that the Puranas and Itihasas are considered the fifth Veda. Why? Because they are the ones which complete the Veda. So to completely understand the Vedas, one needs the help of the Puranas. And in other places, Puranas are defined as historical record. Some books which contain the history of our Earth, solar system, and the universe. Now, there are many different categorizations of the Puranas. However, 18 of them are considered Mahapuranas, or the original, or the mighty ones. And there are other Upapuranas, which are about 108. There are many Sthala Puranas, which are there in different locations. However, those are out of our discussion here, and they're not usually considered part of the Puranas and Itihasas when we talk about the Vedic paradigm. So the Puranas are the fifth Veda. There are 18 Mahapuranas, and there are about 400,000 verses in them. And that's what I have based my research upon. So I'm going to discuss 5 facts in the Puranas which a scientist can learn. The first, I'll discuss age of the universe, then age of the sun, death of the sun, date for Earth's greatest mass extinction, and the boundary of the heliosphere. So let's move forward. So as Subhashji mentioned, we were discussing, he mentioned the point about epistemology. He said the modern scientists can learn about epistemology from the Vedic paradigm. So first of all, what is epistemology? Epistemology is how do you know what you know? So suppose if I were to ask you, do you know, is man mortal? Is every man going to die? Now there are various ways to get to this problem, to get an answer to this problem. The modern method, which is the empirical method or the ascending method, or there's the descending method coming from the sages or the Puranas. So these are 2 methods. One method is building upon induction and deduction methods gradually, and the other method is taking knowledge coming straight from the sages and Vedas and accepting it. So in the case of the empirical method, if you have to figure it out, first you will observe are the men dying? Are men dying? He said, men are dying. I mean, especially now in COVID, you see so many people are dying. Then you will say, okay, this person died, this person died, this person died. So you make a table, n equal to 1, n equal to 2, n equal to 3, and you keep doing it. And then you come up with some kind of deductive formula. And then you make a statement. Yes, man is mortal. Then you keep testing it. And you keep testing it until you observe something, until your evaluation falls apart and you observe something which is different from the statement, and then you have to come up with a new rule, with some kind of new exception or something else, something like that. Just like it happened in the case of gravity. First it was Newton, who saw the apple falling, and then later, we had Einstein come up with his theory of relativity, which gave a further sophistication to the theory of gravity, further sophistication to understanding how does gravity work. So how does that work? Newton had some observation, he had some induction and reduction, he did some testing and evaluation, but there was always a very small amount of error. It was not a perfect formula. And Einstein came and he made this little little switches and some changes in the models, and then he was able to observe his evaluation was much more closer to the observation than what was Newton's proposition. And currently, there are many of the theories of which seek to replace even Einstein's proposition in the future. So that's how the ascending method or the empirical research works. What's the descending method? Descending method is the knowledge comes from the Supreme Person, which is coming from his breath, the Vedas and the Puranas. Puranas are also the 5th Veda. And the sages, they just receive in their mind and they compile it. And then the audience inquires this from the sages. And then the audience, after hearing it, validates it and shares with the sages how their validation has come out to be correct. So this is like a to and fro. But here there's no updates on the Vedas and Puranas. There's a to and fro between sages and audience, but there's never a loop back that let's update the Vedas, let's update the Puranas. It's only one way flow of knowledge. there is some validation also. What kind of validation do we have? What kind of testing evaluation we have? We have two types of validation in the case of Vedic knowledge. One is objective and a subjective. Now, most people or most Hindus or most Indians are aware of subjective validation, which happens a lot, where by following the Vedas and the Puranas, we feel freedom from envy and anger. We feel a new sense of happiness by following the Vedic meditation, Vedic yoga, or other, methods which are given in the Vedas for holistic living. Somebody else also mentioned earlier in the chat that holistic living is something which the Vedas and Puranas can teach to modern audience. So that is there a lot, and that's one of the main reasons why many people take to Vedic lifestyle. However, that's very subjective. It's not something which you can really put on a paper and measure it. What is another? So there has to be some kind of objective validation of the Vedas also, and that's what I was looking for. That is there some way where we can objectively show that the Vedas and Puranas are an authentic source of knowledge? Because if we go back to the chart, this diagram, many other ancient cultures can replace the Vedas and Puranas with their holy books or their ancient textbooks and say, hey, this is a perfect way of gaining knowledge. But is it really knowledge or is it illusion? To qualify something as knowledge, it has to be authentic. It has to, doesn't have to, but it has to, provide some kind of validation to the end user. Otherwise, it's difficult for the audience or the user to accept and adopt it. So Vedas are not averse for people to adopt and evaluate and validate it. Although there is never a case where you can go back and change the Vedas and the Puranas, but that kind of faith and belief is built over years and years of experience of subjective validation. So coming back to this point, that we need some kind of I was looking for some kind of objective validation of the Vedas. Now, this kind of validation can't be very simple. Like suppose if a person comes up to me and say, hey, Vedas talk about earth being round, and that's something very profound, but actually that's not very sound. Why? Because it's not a very difficult observation to have that the earth is round. It's something many of the other ancient cultures had similar observation, and it is something which can easily be observed and by somebody who is paying very close attention to the movements of the sky, to the movements of the planets and other heavenly bodies. So not very profound. So we need some kind of extraordinary, I was looking for some kind of extraordinary data in the Puranas, which can be validated by modern scientific claims. And then I came across many data points, of which I'm going to share 5 today. So first is the origin of the universe. So now this has been a big conundrum for the scientists, that when did our universe originate? Now, up till year 1916, the scientists proposed the universe is eternal. Any guesses why? The reason was that they wanted to avoid the God question. So if there is an eternal universe, there is no need to worry about God, because there is no creator, there's no starting point. But they were forced to accept a creation or a beginning point for the universe. Why? Because in 1930s, Hubble made the discovery that the galaxies were going further away from each other. Now, if something is going further away from each other, they must have a starting point. So what's that starting point? But anyways, what the starting point is a further away question. What's more important is that there has to be a starting point, and that's when they started proposing different values for the age of the universe. So first they proposed 10 to 20 billion years as the age of the universe, and they could not improve it much until even 2000. But then there was a big discovery in the 1980s which caused a change in their measurement values. What was that? In 1980s, scientists discovered by mistake cosmic microwave background radiation. This is the most subtle type of radiation you can find in the universe. So what happened was that there were a couple of scientists who they got Nobel Prize for it. They were working on using waves at very low frequency, and in order to do so, they were having, trying, different techniques, but they keep observing some noise in their instruments. So first they thought maybe there's some bird dropping. So they went on their top of the antenna, cleaned the antenna out, and there's nothing there. And they still keep getting the noise. And then they thought more and more, and then struck them. Oh, this must be some kind of a signature of the beginning of the universe or the Big Bang, because by this time, by 1980s, there was already the idea of Big Bang was already there. So then they looked up the models, and yes, it matched with the models which they had. So cosmic microwave background radiation was discovered in 1980s, but it took scientists another 20 years to create satellites which can go in the universe and measure the properties of cosmic microwave background radiation. By measuring those properties in year 2003 and later in year 2010, NASA's satellite WMAP was able to give a precise value for age of the universe, and that was 13.75 billion years, plus minus 0.1. It means 13.65 to 13.85. So this was not enough, because the European Space Agency was also competing, and they wanted to also know, they also wanted to catch up with NASA. So they launched their satellite with Planck, and it came back in year 2018, and their observation was what? 13.80 billion years. Actually, and the precision was much better than what the NASA had got. But what do the Puranas say? The Puranas state 13.819 billion years. You were saying, hey, you're just making it up. No, actually not. So if you look at the Bhagavad Purana and the Vayu Purana, the Bhagavad Purana describes that Brahma lives for 2 Prarardhas. These are 50 years of Brahma. And we just crossed into the second Prarardha of Brahma. And the last Prarardha was almost 1.5 kalpa away before us. And it is mentioned in the commentaries of Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, and also in the Bhagavad Purana itself, that there was a Prakritika Pralaya, which is a Pralaya when the elements of the universe are destroyed at the end of the last day of Brahma, or at the end of the first 50 years of Brahma, or at the end of the first Prarardha of the Brahma. This was something which was, in some sense, missed by many of the modern day Puranic scholars. But however, it was observed by me and my team. And when we calculated the date based on that, we got this value, 13.819 billion years. So how much different is it from the modern scientific picture? The modern scientific date is 13.801, and the Puranic statement is 13.819. The difference is 0.1%. And there's another aspect to it, which is the scientists are currently discussing, having a fight for a long time actually, that whether it's a big bang or big bounce. Big bang means that there's nothing before the starting point. We can't talk about something before starting point, because they say the time begins here. Whereas big bounce is that, no, there was a universe before also, but somehow either it collapsed and then it started again. So in this two debate, the Puranas have an answer. The Puranas state that the universe is cyclical. There was a universe before. Brahmaji is now 51st year, in his 51st year. There was a 50 years before this also Brahmaji was living. And then there was a universe before that too. So the Puranas are supporting big bounce model. So this is a prediction from the Puranas that of the two models, big bang or big bounce is bound to win. So that was data point number 1. Data point number 2 is the comparison of life of the sun. So currently we are here right in the middle. Our sun, present sun, is yellow in color, as all of us can see. So again, the same thing. The scientists have been trying to understand, how old is our sun for a long time. So up till year 1943 or 1920, 1930s, the estimate was 1 to 10 billion years. And then in 1930s, there was a big breakthrough. What happened? Heinz Bethe discovered or proposed the system for the energy generation in the sun. Prior to him, many people proposed a number of things. Something like somebody even proposed, hey, maybe there's a big, what do you call it? There's a big store of coal there, and the coal is burning so much. But then other people said, hey, if there's so much coal there, coal burns very fast. sun would have been finished by right now. It can't be cold. So hence they discovered or proposed that it is the fusion process which causes this energy generation. He got Nobel Prize for that, and that helped in the calculation of this date for age of the sun. So how do the scientists do that? Now, currently, the scientists look at in the solar system for the oldest rocks, and they try different dating techniques to find out how old is our sun. And their best estimate now is 4.567 billion years. So note that every time they add a more digit, that means they're sure about the previous digit. So now the only digit they are unsure about is the last one, which is the 7. So 4.56, they're pretty sure. Okay. So 4.567 billion years, that's the latest value in 2018. And if you look at my book, I have the references for each of these, and you can study them and know them. Now, what do the Purana state? The Purana state 4.563. So for this one, I'm going to actually show you the calculations. Okay, just for the fun. Okay. Here you go. It's called Brahma's creation. So Brahmaji lives here on the top in the Brahma Loka. There are 14 planetary systems. We're in the middle. Above us there are 6. Below us there are 7. And at the end of Brahma's night, at the end of Brahma's day, everything is destroyed except the top 3. And at the end of Brahma's night, everything is reconstructed by Brahma and Brahma's energies. So here's a shloka from Vayu Purana, and you can find this in other Puranas also. Tato ratri shaye prate prati buddha prajapati mana shishkriya yukta sargaya nidadhe puna. Then, as the night ends, Prajapati, Brahma, wakes up and feels the urge to reconstruct. What does it reconstruct? The solar system. So, as many of you know, because I'm guessing most of us are Indians here in this call, currently we are in the 7th Manvantara. We are past 27 Chaturyugas, we are in the 28th Chaturyuga. 6 Manvantaras have passed, and prior to that, there's also a Pratisandhi. So Brahma's night is here, and Brahma's day is here, and in between there is this Pratisandhi, which is stated in Vayu Purana and Brahmanda Purana as a time unit. This time unit was also missed by many Puranic scholars, but it is explained in detailed manner in my book, which I encourage everyone to read. So the Pratisandhi is of the same duration as a Manvantara in terms of millions of years. So these are millions of years, how much these units correspond to. So currently we have almost 7 Manvantaras plus 27 Chaturyugas plus Satya, Treta, Dwapar add up. And that's the time since when Brahma began the creation of the solar system. Now notice that some scholars take that Brahma is in charge of the universe. Some scholars take Brahma in charge of the solar system. I have chosen Brahma in charge of the solar system because the word in Sanskrit is Brahmanda or the Sarga. So there is no English word there. But what is stated in the 5th canto of the Bhagavad Purana, the planets which are described in the Brahmanda, they go up to Saturn, no further than that. And the distances which are given for the length and breadth of the Brahmanda, except the 7 layers, correspond much more closely to our solar system than to the universe. So I feel the most appropriate translation of Brahmanda or Brahma's Visarga or Sarga corresponds to the solar system. So Brahma at the end of his night begins the solar system's reconstruction. And it happened Pratisandhi plus 6 Manvantaras plus 27 Chaturyugas ago. And when you add these numbers up, you get this date, 4.563 billion solar years. Okay. So we're going back. So that was the birth of the sun. Okay. We keep a track of time. Okay. So how much difference is it from the modern scientific claim? See, I told you also that the last digit, they're not really sure about it. But anyways, Their value is 4.567. Ours is 4.563. The difference is 0.08% or 0.1%. What about the future of the sun? For the future of the sun also, our Puranas state a very precise value, 5.347 billion years. What do the scientists say? 5 to 8 billion years. They don't have a clear answer. Why is that? Because as I said, understanding sun is not an easy thing. You just can't go and pick up a sample from there and put in the lab. You have to do everything from a distance. You can't even send instruments very close enough, otherwise they'll burn and they'll be destroyed. So there's a problem in regards to sun in the minds of astrophysicists. So what's the problem? They're trying to figure out what's the metallicity of the sun, which means how many higher elements are present in the sun. And they have a bunch of guesses there. That's why they don't have a clear value when our sun will die. But one thing you know for sure is the sun is going to become a huge red giant in the future. That is their prediction based on their observation of other stars in the universe. What do our Puranas say? The Bhagavad Purana clearly describes the sun will become at least 7 times its size and red in color before it's destroyed towards the end of the day of Brahma. So quite precise and quite interesting similarity between the prediction of the demise of the sun and the future of the sun between the Puranas and the modern science, isn't it? So those were data point number 2 and 3, the beginning and the age, the origin and the death of the sun. Moving further, the fourth one. So this fourth one, I'm not sure how many of us are aware of the Puranas. The Puranas describe different kinds of pralayas. So in the first data point, I discussed the Prakritika Pralaya, which happens only twice in the day of Brahma, at the end of each Prartha. Then there is a Pralaya which happens at the end of every day, also known as Daina Pralaya. And then there's also Pralaya which happens at the end of every Manvantara. So let me go back to the diagram I was discussing earlier. So here, there are 6 Manvantras which are passed in the day of Brahma. So at the end of every Manvantara, there is a Pralaya. However, it is mentioned in the Bhagavad Purana that the Pralaya which happened at this point, which is at the beginning of our 7th Manvantara or the end of the previous Manvantara, the 6th Manvantara, that Pralaya was the most severe Pralaya in the current day of Brahma. It was as severe as almost the end of the day of Brahma. It corresponds to the Matsya Avatar. I'm sure many of you must have heard the Matsya Avatar. Okay. So when did that Pralaya happen? That Pralaya happened 27 Chaturyugas plus there's a Sandhya also here, plus the Satya, Dwapar and Kali. When we add those up, what do we get? We get 251.2 million years. That's the date for the greatest destruction or the mass extinction, because what happens in a Pralaya is all the living entities suffer a big loss. So that's the biggest mass destruction which happened on the earth according to the Puranas, and that was 251.2 million years ago. Now the scientists, they also study the species, they also study fossil records, and they keep a track of big changes in the records of fossils. So they discovered that the biggest mass extinction which has happened in the history of the earth was the end Permian mass extinction. When did it happen? That happened 251.9 million years ago. This mass extinction was so severe that 90% of the aquatic species and 70% of the land species were wiped out. And there were other symptoms also described by the Puranas of this Pralaya, which are very similar to what the scientists have discovered in terms of the the causes and the features of this mass extinction. So what's the difference in the date? The difference this time is 0.3%. So that was data point number 4. Let's move to 5. Now this is a slightly different kind of discussion or data point. So I'm not sure many of you know, but this is Voyager 1 and Voyager 2. I think Subhash will know about it because they were launched in 70s by NASA. And the goal of these 2 spacecrafts is to discover, the further and further reaches of our space system and our universe and give knowledge back to the scientists, because the scientists, they keep coming with different theories and models, but in order to test those models, they need real data. So these were sent out to really fish out what's happening in the universe, what's happening in the solar system, what's happening outside the solar system, what is out there. And they keep sending data. They're still sending out data, even 40 years since they have been sent out, almost 50 years pretty soon. And they keep telling interesting things about our space, our solar system, and our universe. So around a few years ago, in 2018 and 2019, Voyager 1 and afterwards Voyager 2 crossed an important milestone in an interesting milestone in the space system around our solar system, which is known as heliopause. So our sun is a very powerful star, and it releases a solar wind, which creates a kind of a layer which protects our solar system from the electromagnetic radiation which is present in the outside space, also known as interstellar plasma. So as you can see here, the interstellar plasma, which is a electromagnetic radiation, it sort of like gets deviated or pushed around because of this layer created by our sun. So how far is that layer? That layer is about 120 astronomical units from us. So Voyager 1 said 119 and Voyager 2 said 121, average 120 astronomical units, 120 astronomical units from us. Okay. What's an astronomical unit? An astronomical unit is a distance between us and the sun. So understanding this, let's look at the layers of our Brahmanda, which are described in the Puranas. So as per the Bhagavad Purana, the first layer is a solid layer, or the Shiti, or the earth layer, which is 11 astronomical units. And that corresponds to the distance up to the planet Saturn. And you would find it interesting to know that the planets up to Saturn have all rocky solid cores. Whereas after that, the planets mostly have water or solid ice cores. Sometimes they also have a predomination of ammonia, which is also having hydrogen. So according to the Bhagavad Purana and other Puranas, there are 7 layers, beginning with the earth, then the water, then the fire, or you can say one of the modern days called the Prabhupada translated fire also as electromagnetic radiation or tejas, and then Vayu or force. Now, so according to the Puranas, there's a switch in these 2 layers from this Apa layer to Tejas layer at 121 astronomical units. So according to the Puranas, there should be at this distance from the Earth at 121 astronomical units, there should be a switch in the composition of the space around us. At 121 astronomical units, there should be a switch in the composition of space around us. Let's look again. At 121 astronomical units, there should be a switch in our space. What kind of switch? It should turn to become heavy in tejas or electromagnetic radiation. It turns to become heavy in interstellar plasma, which is nothing but electromagnetic radiation. Now, the scientists have not yet made it to 1221 AU for us to verify that switch or that change. And our proposition is that there should be a change in terms of the forces, some kind of gravitational forces, some kind of other kind of interstellar forces, which should be observed at this distance from the Earth. And I guess we have to wait, if we want to verify this claim, for the Voyager for next probably 400 years, if any of us stay alive up to that time. Okay, so this is the distance of the heliosphere sheath as discussed by modern science and the Puranas. So these are 5 data points. Before I discuss some kind of explanations for it, let's take some responses. Who would like to share what 5 data points I discussed? I encourage people to share only one of them at a time, and then I'll come back to discussing different ways in which people account for it, or how to and discuss how to refute other explanations for this data. So let's see if I can hear some responses. What are different type of data points I discussed? Can somebody name 1, 2, or 3, or 4, or 5? Any of those? They can name them or they can share. You can unmute yourself or you can type in the chat place. What are the 5 data points I discussed? Okay, Vijay Khamba is saying age of the earth. That's good. We got 1. Or age of the sun. That's nice. That's data point number 1. There's 1 done. We have 4 more to go. Four more. What are the 5 data points I discussed? Okay, artificial sun in the future. No, demise of the sun in the future. Malika Jain, that's right. Life of the sun, that's good. Totan is saying demise of the sun. Shankar is saying demise of the sun. That's 2 data points. The third, we need 3 more. Duration of massive destruction. Yes, date for the Earth's greatest mass extinction. That's right, Sanadji. Thank you for sharing that. That's 3. We need 2 more. Two more data points. Okay, Pralaya and Brahma's day and night. Yeah, that corresponds to death and the origin of the sun. We already discussed that, Vijay. Kunalji, yes, starting part of the universe. Very good. The origin of the universe or the date for the Big Bang. Thank you. Malika ji, distance and the Saturn planet. Well, that was not really a data point. The data point was distance and distance of the Heliosphere from us. No, distance from Earth to Sun. That's not the data point I discussed. I didn't say. Change of layer in the universe at 121 AU. That's right, Atulji. You got the best. You got the best one there. Okay. So everybody got all the data points. Now we go back to the presentation. So people may come with different kinds of explanations. Somebody may say, hey, maybe these sages guess these data points. The Puranas and Vedas are not really authoritative source of knowledge. Well, the Puranas and Itihasas have numbers as large as 10 raised to the power 62. That means 1 followed by 62 zeros. Now, given such large numbers possible, what's the possibility that they could have guessed the correct date? The correct date, the probability will be 1 over 10 to the 62. What's the possibility of guessing 3 such dates? That's 1 over 10 to 186. I discussed 5 dates, which increases the probability further, which reduces the probability further. So definitely, this is not probable at all. This is highly, highly unlikely. So my book has half a dozen more such precise data points, and there are many other qualitative data points also discussed in my book, which anybody who wants to go further in the topic is welcome to study. So definitely, guessing does not account for it. So let's go back to our initial presentation, epistemology, as Subhashji brought it in the beginning. How do we get knowledge? So there's the ascending method and the descending method. The ascending method, modern science, it's inaccurate by design. The hypotheses are always evolving. It needs constant modification, and there are human agendas involved. Whereas descending knowledge, which is coming from the Puranas and Vedas, is knowledge free from mistakes, as we can see here. For the last hundreds of years, scientists were saying something else, whereas the Puranas were saying something which was quite different from everybody's understanding. And now, in the modern age, in 2020, we're finding that what the Puranas were saying for the last hundreds of years is coming out to be true and very precisely matching with the modern scientific claims. The Puranas and Vedas encourage us to do individual validation also. They don't ask us to wait for the scientists to validate them. They have given in the Puranas and Vedas methods so that we can individually verify and validate these statements of the Puranas, because Puranas and Vedas are primarily texts meant for self-realization, and they have given methods for self-realization, and by practicing those methods of self-realization, one can himself or herself feel the effects of such practice. There is no need to modify Puranas and Vedas. They are the same as they were thousands of years ago. And in fact, there is no interference possible in them at all, because there are so many different commentaries. So if somebody tries to interpolate one, you can find another commentary and fix such kinds of interpolations. So based on this, what are the implications? So there are 3 main implications of this finding. 1, The modern scientific claims have this problem. Many of these research which I shared, that there is no independent way to verify modern scientific claims. It's very difficult to verify such sophisticated claims. But for the first time, the Puranas and Vedas are acting as an independent way for verifying modern scientific claims. So the first one is what? Independent verification of modern scientific claims. But the second one, it has been a topic of debate for a long time whether there are nature's laws or there are gods which are running the show. Actually, it's not just one or the other, it's both of them. Gods plan it out, and then they create such laws which act in a perfect manner around us to create the world. So it's divine beings and laws, not just the one or the other. It's not Brahma or the nature's laws. It's Brahma and nature's laws, where the laws have been built by him. And finally, which is the most important one, that the Puranas, they and the Vedas are primarily texts on lifestyle. Currently, our society is suffering from heavy mental and physical pollution. There's so many cases of stress, anxieties, and so many health-related problems. And that's all because of us adopting modern lifestyle, which is use and throw, which is looking in a very short-sighted manner. The Puranas and Vedas recommend a life of long-sightedness, where we look long into the future, where we understand that we are eternal beings. And such kind of lifestyle is actually a true antidote to current mental and physical pollution. So I highly recommend everyone to adopt the Vedic lifestyle, to adopt the Puranas and Vedas as the primary means of gaining knowledge, whether it be material or spiritual. So with this, I'd like to end my presentation. I'm back to my first slide. And let me see. Here's my email address. If anybody would like to reach out to me to do more research or throw in more questions, they're welcome to. And now we can take more questions or comments. So thank you, everyone. We have 8 more minutes in this presentation, and screen seems distorted. Oh, I'm sorry. Can we see the screen right now?
Can we ask a question now?
Yes, please.
So what my thing is that the way you are saying what the Vedas say is absolutely right. It is absolutely perfectly right. So when in science we are making so many assumptions, can't we just say that when we are seeing so many facts, they are right? So that you take it from there, from then, and then try to come down. That's my point. They should change the basic strategy.
Well, there are 2 things to it, Subhashji. One thing is that the Vedas and Puranas are not textbooks on astrophysics and cosmology. So if somebody wants to know details of cosmology and astrophysics, the Puranas and Vedas cannot satisfy their inquiry. The point of this presentation is not this, that tomorrow onwards we're going to replace the books on physics and astrophysics and start teaching Vedas and Puranas as the primary textbooks on that. The point is that the Vedas and Puranas are an authentic source of knowledge, and their expertise is shown in the fields of lifestyle, in the fields of self-realization, which are much more sophisticated topics than the topics of material sciences. So these data points which are present in the Puranas, they are just thrown around and discussed in a very minor manner in the Puranas for the purpose of increasing the faith of people in the Vedas and Puranas. Because my understanding is that the Lord knew that in future people will be a very atheistic attitude and they won't have any faith in the Vedas and Puranas. So by seeing such data points, some people's faith in the Vedas and Puranas will arise, and then they will take it to adopting the lifestyle of Vedas and Puranas.
You're absolutely right there. You're absolutely right. My point is something else. My point is when the science is saying these data points are perfect, why don't we then assume that and try to work on that rather than the opposite way around?
As I said, because scientists also want to understand the mechanism, they also want to understand how the forces work.
No. Either the science is all biased. They're all biased. they want to work the same way they have been working, so many years. So they don't want to change. That's the point. Point is that I'm saying they don't want to change. So my point is something absolutely basic point. I'm coming to a basic point.
Yeah. Well, another point, Subhashji, is this, that many of the scientists actually are not aware of the Vedas and Puranas also. Like, prior to this research, I also did a literature survey, and I couldn't find much which could convince the scientist to look to Vedas and Puranas as authentic source of knowledge. So, can you, if you think back, I guess apart from yoga and Ayurveda, I don't know any other empirical fields in which the scientists could be convinced of the supremacy or the authenticity of the Vedas and Puranas.
Yeah, exactly what you're saying. That's what I'm trying to say. They don't have any knowledge of the Vedas. That's why they are not ready to change.
Yeah, yes.
That is my point. That is my point only.
Thank you, Subhashji. So yes, so we can all work together to make this, to make the scientists more aware of this research and hence make a difference.
Yeah.
Thank you.
What is the take on Jyotish Shastra, the Hora Shastra by Parashar Muni? That is very highly technical content is there as far as the astronomy is concerned. So how do the astrophysicists of modern days, don't they look at the Hora Shastra? Because that, I think, apart from the Ayurveda and the other thing you told, no, I think the astronomy, as contained in the Hora Shastra of Parashar Muni, is also can be exploited by the modern scientists, I feel.
That's great. Now you have told me of a project which you can pursue, because it's not an easy thing to decipher the Sanskrit literature of India, because thanks to the Britishers in 1800s and 1900s, they made us lose faith in the Vedic literature, and the living tradition which is coming for hundreds of years got lost. So people have difficulty in interpreting the Hora Shastra or other Jyotish Shastra into English or modern language. So that is something, a project which I encourage everyone to, anyone who is interested in in this topic of Jyotish Shastra, to pursue and write some papers and present some interesting findings from the Hora Shastra, which you think scientists must be aware of. At least in my current study, I'm not aware of anything from the Hora Shastra which will impress the modern scientists, because, as I said, I have not yet studied them, and I don't know, I haven't looked at the modern astrophysics, but it's something which people can take it up. So Vinayji, you're welcome to take it up.
I feel it's not that easy for somebody to just take it up. So it's a highly technical, no? Even to understand Hora Shastra, that is a very, very, very technical.
Yeah.
So it's a good project, but there are people who are working on this field.
Yes. So yeah, Vinayji, I encourage others to take it up, and I personally took a brief look at the Jyotish Shastra. It's very, very complex, as you mentioned, and I feel very far away from my field of expertise, which is data science. Thank you for bringing that out. Anybody else? Any comments? Let's see. Vinay Kambi saying, yes, go ahead.
Yeah. Hare Krishna Prabhu. My name is Lokesh Srinath, and I'm from Malaysia. So I'm currently pursuing my postgraduate in nanotechnology. So first and foremost and utmost.
Can you say again where you from? One more time.
Yes, I'm from Malaysia.
Oh, great.
Yeah. So first and foremost, utmost interesting talk, utmost fantastic talk. I learned a lot. So I just have 3 questions, Prabhu. Question number 1 is that, as per Varaha Puranam, it is said that there was this one point where the earth was sunk in the sea, but that is not the sea on earth. That was a cosmic sea, and I can't recall the name of that. So what is your view on that? Question number 1.
Okay, let's deal with that. It's called Garbhodaka Ocean. So
yeah, okay.
Okay, so let me answer that.
Sure.
And you'd be surprised to know that I calculate the date for that event when that happened. The date for that is given in the Puranas. And when we compare that with the modern understanding of paleontology, you'd be surprised to know that our Earth was once covered in water up to India completely, and that period is called Snowball Earth. That happened about 600 million years ago. So for a period of 100 million years, which corresponds very closely to the rule of Hiranyaksha on the Bhumandala, during that period, our Earth was covered practically whole in water. There was icebergs up to Delhi.
Right.
And I discuss the details of this in my book in chapter number 6. Given we have very limited time, I can't go further into it. But there is a very strong correspondence between the pastime of Varaha Avatar and the modern understanding of paleontology and geology.
Okay, right, great. So that means it was the sea on Earth, right? I mean, it was not like some kind of external sea, right?
It's much more complicated than that. It's not such a simple thing. So I guess you're making me to talk so we can discuss a little bit. I hope Dr. Jyoti doesn't get angry at me. Okay, so I'm going to share a slide here and we can discuss it from there. Okay. So let's see. So can you see the slides I'm showing?
Yeah.
So there are two things happening on this page. On the left hand side, you have a 3D world. On the right hand side, you have a 2D world. Okay.
Right. Okay.
So what do you see here? You see, if you're on the 2D world, you would see a circle which is contracting and expanding, isn't it?
Exactly.
And it's almost like a mysterious or magical thing. You know what's happening here. And if you try to draw an equation to describe it, it would be very convoluted description. Whereas if you're in a 3D world at the same place, if you can see a 3D world, you can see actually it is just a sphere which is passing through my plane. Very simple explanation, very simple model to put on the paper. So similarly, the Puranas, what they're describing is called Bhumandala, whereas what we see is our Earth. Now, Bhumandala, the descriptions of Bhumandala which are given in the Puranas, they're much more complicated and detailed and, in other words, higher dimensional than the Earth which we experience. And modern science, since 1900s, thanks to Einstein's theory of relativity, accepts that the world around us is higher dimensional. Whether it be D theory, D star theory, or string theory, they all accept, with the M theory, they all accept that the world around us is higher dimensional. So they understand that Earth, which we see, is only 3-dimensional, but there's much more to Earth, and we really can't experience this. Our empirical methods are limited. The Earth, which is described in the Puranas, is a higher dimensional, or known as Bhumandala. That's why if you read in the Puranas, it is described that the Himalayas are 120,000 kilometers tall. Okay. Now, even a person who is illiterate can know the difference between 9 kilometers tall and 120,000 kilometers tall. You have to be really drunk or some kind of really intoxicated to make such a mistake. Now, these are the people who are writing or compiling the Puranas. They're using Sanskrit, which is very sophisticated language. So people with such kind of intelligence, how can they make such a mistake where they call a mountain which is only 9 kilometers tall on the Earth as 120,000 kilometers tall? And also, if you notice, the Bhagavad Purana is full of such magnificent numbers and things happening. So this forces us to accept that actually Bhumandala, which is being described in the Puranas, is actually higher dimensional. So when we hear that the Bhumandala was put in the Garbhodaka ocean, this is not a simple thing that it was put in some sea. There's no sea around our Earth. It's happening in a higher dimensional world. But at the same time, there is a direct congruence or correlation or connection between the Bhumandala and our Earth. Whatever event happens to Bhumandala, it also happens on our Earth, not exactly in its exact same manner, but very close manner.
Okay.
So when Bhumandala was under Garbhodaka ocean, in the same period, you notice the Earth was also covered in water. Now this is not a one-to-one correspondence to the Puranas, but a very close correspondence. Okay, so that's just a basic understanding of it. I recommend you read the book to get a deeper insight. You have to think a lot. It's not an easy topic to understand.
Okay. Thank you so much, Prabhu. And second question, what do Bhagavad Puranas talk about ET? Is there any description about ET as per the Puranic statement?
What does ET mean? ET means extraterrestrial beings.
Yeah, exactly. That's what exactly.
Well, the Puranas are full of such descriptions. At every page, there's a demigod, there's a heavenly being appearing, and he's doing all kinds of magical and mystical things. Those are all extraterrestrial beings.
So those all are referred as ET lah.
Yeah,
all right.
Extra terrestrial. Terrestrial means those who are on our Earth, and extra means those who are outside of our Earth. So there is, zillions and zillions of extraterrestrial beings in the Puranas. It's full of those people.
And my last question, if time permits, of course, could you please explain a little further on this, the big bond theory, as per a Puranic statement, if time permits, of course.
Yeah. So I didn't bring slides for that because again, it's a more detailed presentation.
Right. Okay.
So I recommend, again, you can look up the book, or as I gave my email address in the beginning, or I can share it here again also my slide.
What's your book title again? Sorry, I missed out on that. What's the book title?
It's in the chat, you can see, and this is my email address. You can after
The link is posted in the chat box.
Okay, sure. Okay, very much. Thank you so much.
If you have any further questions, I like questions by sincere readers or sincere practitioners. They can shoot me questions at this email address, and I'll be happy to answer them. Okay.
Okay, but thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Welcome. Okay, I guess that's it. So if anybody has more questions or comments, we can take now. Otherwise, I think we're already 5 minutes past our time. 6 minutes past.
If other comments are not there, I have a question. So, would you like to entertain?
So, Jyotish Prabhu, before your question, I would like to just have a few announcements, because then, audience starts to leave actually.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, I'll just take 1 minute.
Should I share the screen?
Yeah, please.
So, announcements?
Yes. Just I'll take 1 minute.
I'm just sharing the screen.
Okay.
And
yeah.
Okay, so the second session by Mr. Sidharth Chhabra is next Sunday. Evidences of Reincarnation, Near-Death Incidents, Western versus Vedic Science. Life after that, Parapsychologists and Sages. So it will be a wonderful, interesting session like today. So I would request audience to come again in greater numbers. And next, we are also doing this Art and Science of Practical Spirituality, ASPS level 1, for those who are really interested in practicing the spiritual life in an authentic manner. So this program is already going on. So whoever is interested, please will put link in the chat window. So those who want to participate, it's a 3-month long program. And it's based on 5S methodology. It's not that 5S in Japanese lean manufacturing, but S means here, 5S means S means Swadhyay. We read directly from the scriptures. We have science and spirituality dialogue. We have Sambandh, open heart discussions. And even after the sessions, we have Sadachar sessions and Sadhana sessions, okay? So these 5S sessions in ASPS. And it's an online course. So those who want to do so Jyotish Prabhu, please put the link so that interested people can join. And next. Okay, next, please. We are also having this Learn Bhagavad-Gita session certificate course, which was started on 5th of June. So already, I think 3-4 sessions already passed, but still you can participate in this. So wonderful session going on. It's like 18 chapters in 18 sessions. Every one session, we are covering one chapter. So it's a wonderful program every Saturday, 5:30 p.m. to 7 p.m. Okay, next. And we are also having one Mahamantra research project where we are the research on effect of chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra on the physical and mental health. So the various researchers are participating in this project, from Dr. Tanushree Das. She's a UX researcher, Accenture from USA, Professor R. Kumar from ESIC Medical College and Hospital, Faridabad, and Professor Suchi Agarwal and Avinash Agarwal from King George Medical University. Next slide. Okay, so this is little, I will read this. So the aim of the study is the effect of Mahamantra chanting on building positive mental attitude and improving the quality of life. So those who are interested, they can give their name with mobile number and writing interested in research on Mahamantra. So we'll add you in the research if you are interested. Hare Krishna. So we can now go back to the question answer session. Thank you, Sidharth, for allowing us to 1 minute this announcement session. Thank you. Okay.
So, yeah,
Now we
thank
can
you.
go on. No problem.
Yeah, thank you so much for updating us. I have a question. You mentioned about the 7 layers. So I had someone impression that the layers are more of kind of subtle, in the sense they're not really so much physically accessible as we think, because the content inside the cell is also kind of counted, and maybe if you can ignore them, so that way it may count for the average spacings between the layers. So what is your comment on that? So it's just the gross way of stacking things, or how do you see these things?
Well, Prabhuji, it seems that I mean, if I remember the layers, the first 5 layers are gross, and then the next 2 layers are subtle. So the next 2 layers are Mahat, and there's, I mean, depending on which, they're actually different presentations. Some says Ahankar and Mahat, others says Mahat and Buddhi, Buddhi and Mahat. So depending on which one you take. Either ways, the first 5 are considered to be gross, and this next 2 are considered to be subtle elements from our basic understanding of Bhagavad-Gita. Now, this stacking of the layers, one on the top of each other, one on top of each other, which is I presented in my slides. Let me share again. Is very intuitive and general. I would like to know what's the other explanation possible, because I have not seen any other way of stacking those layers up apart from the ones apart from the way which I presented, which is, first there is the earth, then there's the Tejas, next one is the Vayu, next one is the ether, and the further one is the. That's the only way I can see that they can be stacked up. What's another way of stacking them up?
No, I don't know. I'm just asking.
And this seems pretty intuitive, and it seems to be verified. It seems that it has been validated by the claims made by Voyager. And there's another interesting thing I noted in my book, that when you add the distances of these 5 layers, which are the gross ones, so then you get the next 2 are subtle. So definitely those are definitely subtle, which we can't be measured or validated by any of the instruments. And given that what we see in the universe is only the gross world, we don't see the subtle world. So if you take one solar system, as we understand, our solar system is one of the smallest solar system in the universe. Our Brahman is the smallest one. We hear in Chaitanya Charitamrita that our Brahmaji has 4 heads and is considered to be the smallest solar system. There are other Brahmas with more heads, and the solar system is huge. So our Brahmaji has a smallest solar system. So what will be the minimum distance between 2 solar systems? So since ours is the smallest one, to have another one, it also has its layers. So they can't merge into each other. The layers can't clash in each other. So there has to be a minimum distance between 2 solar systems based on these layers. So I calculated it by adding these layers. And the distance which comes out to be 2 light years between the nearest solar system possible from our Earth. So the nearest solar system which we can have to our Earth has to be at least 2 light years away. And the nearest solar system we know is the Andromeda galaxy, which Andromeda's dual star solar system, which is exactly 2.1 light years away from our Earth. Yeah, so I mean, another way of validating it. However, these topics are very much, you can say, topics of active research. But whatever I have found, it seems to validate this model. If you have some other model, I'm happy to look at it and see how to understand it.
Prabhuji, I have one more question. Like you told that there is a high dimensional a picture of the Bhumandala,
Yeah.
and did you have made any comment on the different Varsha, no? Like Bharat Varsha, the Earth planet is supposed to be Bharat Varsha, and there are other varshas like Ilavat Varsha or the Kim Purush Varsha, which are all which are not seen. So did you make any mention in your book on these varshas of the Bhumandala?
No. Exactly for the same reason as you mentioned, because the Bhumandala is higher dimensional, we won't find all the features which are discussed in the Puranas on the Bhumandala on our earth. We will find some kind of connection, but not everything can be found because Bhumandala is higher dimensional. And as I said, I showed an example, like in this case, on this plane, there are some points. Suppose there are 10 points. Suppose x-axis is 10, y-axis is 10. So you have 100 such points. But the moment you add a third dimension to it, you actually have infinite points on the same space. Like I can give you the address of the Punjabi Bagh ISKCON temple. I think it's something like 155 by 16, something, I'm not sure, very strange number, Punjabi Bagh Road. Now, if I give you just the ground floor, you won't be able to meet Dr. Jyotisha Prabhu there. But if you want to meet him, you have to go to the second floor. So the moment you have a third dimension, you have so many more options than what we are used to. So in the same case, when you have a Bhumandala, and you have the earth, if you have more dimensions at every point on our earth, there is infinite possibilities. So to match everything which is there in the Bhagavad Purana or the other Puranas, which is describing the Bhumandala to our earth, is practically impossible. But there is some connection, as we are finding, at least in the time space, in the time axis, there's a very strong connection.
Okay, thank you, Prabhu.
You're welcome.
And also, I have another question. So,
Yes, sir.
So
Yes,
do
sir.
you find any evidence for the discovery of expanding universe? Because it's a debatable topic. Because quite some years back, some Oxford professor Subhit Sarkar, so he was a bit skeptical about expanding universe. So, what does Puranas say, or anything, some indirect way at least?
Well, we know from the Puranas that the universes or the Brahmandas, they come from the pores of Mahavishnu, and they're small as like seed, and they keep on expanding. Now, if they are staying at their place, when they're expanding at the same space, they won't be able to expand. So from that logic, it seems that they will have to keep going further away from each other. And from what I understand from the modern scientific understanding, that cosmologists agree that the universe is expanding, but the disagree is that whether it is expanding at specific rate, at X rate or Y rate or Z rate. They have so many different values. Some people say it has stopped expanding. Like it is expanding, but at a very much lower rate than what other people think. So there's so many debates on that at the rate of expansion. But I don't know of anybody who claims that, at least in the modern science, that the universe is not expanding. You know better. I mean, you are a physicist.
No, I'm not. I don't work in that area. So, the conception of universe in the modern times, that's basically fabricated out of the metrics, the so-called metrics in Einstein's relativity. So it's kind of expansion of the structure is of space and time. So, but the way we see in Puranas, the shape of the universe is kind of more. It's very different. It appears. So, do you have any comments on this?
What is the shape of the universe in the Puranas? I would like to know.
So we call it Brahmanda. So that is my impression that it appears like an egg shape.
Oh yeah, that's why I talked about it briefly. I should have spoken more slowly on that. I think that the better translation for Brahmanda is a solar system, not a universe, and I gave reasons for that.
Yeah, I follow that. Yeah.
So when you apply Brahmanda to a solar system, then we don't really have any shape given for the universe, which makes sense because if you hear in terms of the explanation of the Mahavishnu, creating different Brahmandas, there is no explanation, there's no description given on that in the Bhagavad Purana as far as I have read. I've not read in detail, but whatever I've read, I've not heard any description. There is a description given of the world in which Garbhodakshai Vishnu lives, or the Brahmanda where Garbhodakshai Vishnu lives in the Garbhodaka ocean. But as far as I know, the description of the place where Mahavishnu is creating the universe, this material world, is not really given.
So it's a reference from basically not directly from Bhagavatam, but it's from Chaitanya Charitamrita, where glories of Lord Nityananda is described. So there, it's somewhere, if I'm correct, it mentions that Krishna's Kaviraj Goswami mentions that the universe, as you said, it starts from a very small structure, and then it expands. But then it appears like a golden egg, kind of golden egg above the Viraja river or the Karan Sagar, kind of that. So maybe we can.
I can take a look at it. If you can send me reference for it, I can take a further look.
I'll look for that.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Nevertheless, this is an interesting observation. The solar system matches with the description of modern science. But in the Vedic
Also,
understanding, please.
I just want to add there. Actually, Prabhupada also, because most of us are followers of Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, he actually also was not really sure about the appropriate translation. He gave a lecture in South Africa in 1975, and then in the lecture also he used for Brahmanda both solar system and the universe, and he said you can take both, because he was not really teaching for the purpose of teaching cosmology or astrophysics.
Right.
So he didn't make a difference. For him, solar system or universe, they're one and the same. But for somebody who's studying cosmology or astrophysics, there's a big difference between these two terms. But for him, they are one and the same. It's just the world outside of the earth. He didn't care so much about it,
Yeah, right. Even in our Vedic conception, Puranic conception, we're just one sun. So we can call the Brahmanda, as we say, just the one solar system.
Yeah. That makes perfect sense. Brahma Samhita we hear. There's only one sun. No, and that doesn't fit the universe at all. Also, so there's many different problems with taking universe to be Brahmanda.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Yes, Lokesh ji.
Sir, Hare Krishna, just one more question. What do our the Puranas talk about dark energy or dark matter, Prabhu?
First, can you share your name and where you're from? What's your background? Something about yourself?
Okay, sorry. My name is Lokesh Srinath, and I'm from Malaysia, and I am doing my postgraduate in nanotechnology. So, but I do have this interest in astrophysics and cosmology. So I'm trying to pursue that in quantum physics level. You see, that's the thing.
Great. So regarding dark energy and dark matter, it's very interesting that 95% of the world around, of the universe around us, is something which we can't account for as per the modern models of whether it be theory of relativity or theory of general relativity. We can't account for it based on our current models, and many scientists are proposing other alternative models by which it can be accounted for. So actually, dark space and dark energy is only a feature of a model. It's not really something which you can't measure it. You can't really know what it is, and it is something which has been put because our models can't explain everything. So this is something like you can say, because we currently don't know about, suppose like currently I'm in Zambia, Lusaka, it's in Africa. I'm visiting here for some time, sharing a course here. Now, until I came here, Africa was just like a black spot in my map. I've never been there. I don't know what's there. If I'd never been there, I would make just a black mark there. But that does not mean that it's really dark. It's just that we don't know how to understand. So scientists have not yet made their way into it. And the Puranas and Itihasas, they explain everything regarding the creation, regarding the destruction, in as much detail as possible, so as to share the glories of the Supreme Lord, how amazing the Supreme Lord is. We have to understand that by reading these numbers, we should be amazed to see the intelligence, to see the capacity of the Supreme Lord to plan out such a beautiful universe, such a solar system, in which after 5 billion years, we are here talking about it, how it was created, and he was the one who planned it in such an amazing manner. So the purpose of the whole discussion of creation destruction is to create awe and reverence in the mood of the reader towards the Supreme Lord, towards the Supreme Creator. These books are not necessarily meant to be books on physics. So if you really, like you're a student of aeronautics, I would not recommend that you start studying aeronautics based on what's given in the Bhagavad Purana, because that's not a book meant for it. There is a book meant for it, and that is you have those textbooks. You study aeronautics using those textbooks. But when it comes to understanding what is life? What's the purpose of life? Which is actually a very, very important question, because we are eternal souls. We're not meant to just live this lifetime. Once we understand that, then we should dedicate every day some time to study the Puranas and Vedas for the purpose of going deeper in self-realization.
Right. Okay, Prabhu. Thank you so much, Prabhu.
You're welcome.
Yes,
Thank you for interesting questions.
Yeah, there is one question in the comments, the chat box, if you could take it up. Sanat Bhattacharya.
Okay. So thank you, Sidharth Bhattacharya, for your question. And also, if you can share your background, it will help a lot for me to know where you're coming from. So first question, does the solar system includes Maharloka and Tapaloka? Yes. My understanding is a solar system corresponds to the Brahmanda. That's what I said. Now, what is really a solar system? The modern science doesn't have a very, very precise definition, but the way they define is the planetary system and the planets which are supported by our sun. And that's practically what is we hear from the Bhagavad Purana, that Brahmanda is what is put together or kept together by one sun. This one sun is providing energy to all the planetary beings, all the planets inside this space. This is discussed in the second canto and chapter number 5th of this is discussed by Shukadeva Goswami when Parishit Maharaj is asking a question about the solar system, about the creation. So you can look it up there. There is explained that our sun is actually keeping all the planets in their orbit and also providing them all the energy which they need. And that corresponds pretty well to solar system. Okay. Is our solar system big enough to incorporate such major time zones? Yes. So time is not really a feature of, how much space you have. Time is a very interesting quantity. It's actually a very malleable quantity. And depending on the nature of the space, we can have different time zones. Like, just to give one example, these satellites which are going around our Earth, they actually have to add a time correction before they give us GPS coordinates. So in all our phones, there is time dilation happening to account for the data coming from the satellites. So there's time dilation happening in this one way, which is based on distance, but there are many different ways in which time dilation can happen, and scientists don't know of all the ways in which time dilation can happen, because space is a very mystical thing. It's not that scientists have know everything about everything. They know something about very few things. So they don't understand it well enough to that they can claim that there is no space for time zones. I mean, such major difference in time zones, such small space. Yes, possible, no problem. Since the metallic composition of the sun is still unknown, the definition of sun is still unknown. Yes, in some sense it's unknown because they're trying to figure it out. I would say they know pretty well enough because they know that the sun will finish in 5 to 8 billion years, but they don't know accurate enough to give a very precise value. Currently, I'm doing my BTech in EC. Okay, great. Thank you for the good questions. Sanat Bhattacharya, so one sun may be possible. Yes, one sun is possible. Actually, in our solar system, there is one sun, and our solar system corresponds to one Brahmanda. So there is only one sun in a Brahmanda. Each star has its own solar system, and they have their own Brahmandas. Just like that. Thank you, Sanat, for your questions. I appreciate it. I think hopefully that was the end of all the questions.
Yeah, it looks like that. So it's already 7, about to 7. There's 2 minutes left. So I think I can.
Okay, can I avail this 2 minutes, Prabhuji?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Please.
Prabhuji, see, what we understand that the Vedic, the corpus we have at present is the abridged version of the all the Vedic literature actually which exists, and the Vedavyasaji has given as the abridged version, cutting down many of the portions which is supposed to still exist in the higher planetary system.
That's
so
right.
I think many of the informations what the people are asking that may be available, how to comprehend all those things. So I think we have to be content because we are not able to even go through these whatever been given by Vyasadeva. So that is my comment. So thank you.
Thank you. You're right. Jiva Goswami makes this point in the Tattva Sundarva, and also is given in the other Puranas, that actually the Puranas actually have 1 billion verses in the higher planetary systems. 1 billion. And what we have access to is only 400,000, which is a very minuscule portion of that. So thank you for sharing that, Vinayji. I don't know, what's your spiritual name, Vinayji? Maybe you can share later.